Hey, my name is Jay Martin. Thanks for watching. This is a 1v1 Napoleon game on Grassy Flatlands. And this, I got a friend of mine, Devil's Legion Roman numeral 1, contacted me. He said, hey, you got to watch this. This is a crazy game. And he's right. This is a crazy game. I think this is my fourth time watching it now. It was really good, and I decided to finally break the microphone out and do the commentary on it. But there's a lot I want to get to in this game, so I'm probably going to talk a little fast and maybe move a little slower than usual because I want to fit it all in. There's two players. I'm not really clear who the players are. And this replay was uploaded by Caraticus Finch, who's a player you've probably run into if you play a lot of Napoleon. But we have a Portuguese player and a Prussian player, both from the Devil's Legion clan, is what's going on. We have a Portuguese army. I assume the rules here were no art and 5 lights because he has 5 lights. The strength of Portugal is their light infantry, which he has bunched 3 and 2. There's a militia unit in there in the center, 8 line infantry, and then he has 4 cav. The thing about Portugal is their infantry is pretty good. Their light infantry is the best in the game. Their line is good, but their cav is just horrendous. And what he's done to combat that is put chevrons in the cav. This is a good move. However, you probably maybe noticed in a previous video I talked about how chevrons work, and the real bonus you get out of chevrons, what you're really looking for, is the morale boost. And morale points come on the odd-numbered chevrons. So what he's done is 2, 2, 2, 1. If I might have done this different, I might have allocated the chevrons 1, 1, 1, 3, and you would get maximum morale boost off of your chevrons. Now, obviously, the second chevron gives you better, speed and melee attack and defense and all that nonsense. But in order to get the max benefit out of your morale, which is what you really want out of the chevrons, I might have allocated those chevrons a bit differently. There's a handful of little tactical things that I want to get to in this game and see if I can get the other player to spawn for the Prussians, and we'll see what happens. One thing to point out is notice the initial deployment of the army, 2 lights here, 3 lights here, and how that'll carry out throughout the course of the game. So here's the Prussian army. What you got is 5 lights on the left, backed up by 3 regular musketeers. Now, Prussian lights are the second best in the game. And then over here we have a bunch of elite infantry. These are 4-foot guards here. I thought you could only bring 3 of them. I must be mistaken there, but and then a couple of regular lines. So what you have is different types of strengths on the flanks. You have 5 light infantry grouped on what we're going to call the left, and then his elite infantry grouped on the right. He has 3 cav available, hussars, which are kind of getting more popular, I've noticed, in Napoleon. I think lancers are substantially better at not much more cost, but he brought the 4-foot guards, so we had to make a lot of changes. The thing I wanted to notice, if I pause the game, one thing I noticed that a lot of players do is they stick to their initial deployment a little too strictly. So the Portuguese player has 2 lights here and 3 lights over here. And he's presented with an opponent that has bunched 5 lights and a hammer on one flank. And what you'll notice over the next couple minutes is that he doesn't change the deployment or the allocation of where on the field to put his forces. And I think that this is a flaw that a lot of players make. Just because you started with an initial plan to put 3 lights over here doesn't mean you necessarily want to keep them there. And I think if I was the Portuguese player, you want to do it one of 2 ways. You can't put your 2 lights just in to fight the 5 over there. So you either want to shift like 2 of these guys this direction, have 1 to shoot up the foot guards, or move all of them, or move the lights over here. You want to do. I think that what I'm really trying to say is I think that keeping 2 light infantry just to fight 5 Prussian is a bad idea, and you don't see the player switch their allocation there, which I think is kind of is something I would have done differently. Or I'm curious what was going through the player's head at this particular time. Okay, so on the right, what you've noticed is that the Prussian player has obviously kind of issued a bunch of move orders, and a bunch of people are moving, and these 2 cav units kind of come up here, and he's obviously planning to move the rest of his line in front of them. The lights start to move on the left. The Portuguese player isn't doing a whole lot right now. You notice he does switch in a light formation to get extra stretch out bonus, which is arguably a defense against the 5 lights that are incoming, but not much. On the right side, it looks like the Portuguese player wants to get his lights in to shoot at the foot guards. guards, which is exactly what I would have done. I'm a little surprised that the Prussian doesn't have a militia or a meat shield for all of these foot guards. I think that is maybe I would cut like this musketeer, put a militia here, and upgrade the lancers. I'm a little curious what the thought was behind the build order there. But that's obviously what happened, and this takes a bit of time to develop. So on this flank, for some reason, that was a bit of a micro hiccup. Like this cav unit just runs out into no man's land and gets tagged, and the Prussian really just gives away a cav unit there, which probably kicking himself. You want to when you're redeploying, you got to be careful. Obviously, the Prussian right here is rethinking his advance into the face of the Portuguese lights and got lost a cav unit sitting in front. That one needs to be moved too. It kind of the same problem is going on there. And then if we look over on this side, it looks like an advance is coming from the Prussian. Again, I'm really not sure what's occurring. That the Portuguese player is moving a militia unit up here, which is just going to get shot to fuck. Now, let's pause and talk about this for a second. What's happening is Prussian player is advancing all the lights. Okay. In order to get away from that, Portugal is kiting their lights back or withdrawing their lights, which is probably the right thing to do. But two things I don't understand. The first is that this militia unit moves in, and it's going to take shots from these lights here, but it's not guarding anything. It's not buying, it's not meat shielding for anything. It's just getting shot up. Okay, so I don't understand the movement of that militia. And the second thing I don't understand is the necessity of charging this hussar unit at the militia because it's already getting shot up by the lights. This militia doesn't have any chevrons on it. It's going to rat really quick, but nonetheless, this cav unit comes in for the charge. And this winds up kind of being profitable for Portugal because when that cav unit gets in there, all of a sudden it's going to be, there you go, it's going to be in range, and this cav unit is going to get thumped pretty good. Now, he's like, well, I'm fucked anyway, so he continues his charge into the cazadores there, but moving pretty slow, and it takes the volley, and I kind of feel like there was, suboptimal cav use there. So when you use your cav, you want to think about what value you're going to get for it or kind of what it's doing. I thought that both players there, the militia move up, and then the cav unit back, were arguably bad. Okay, so big action here. Portugal's smart thing is tearing up those foot guards. And another interesting play occurs here. Pause. So Prussia wants to advance all of its foot guards up to shoot at the cazadores, and it charges cav at its last cav unit at these lights just to disorganize them. And what winds up happening is because he doesn't have a meat shield, a militia unit for the foot guards, he winds up using his cav unit as a de facto meat shield to take volleys while the foot guards run in behind them. Not an optimal use of resources. This cav unit it doesn't even charge. It just kind of sits there, and then okay, we'll continue the charge, and it's going to take that volley from the line behind. Now, it does perform the meat shield role well, and it does disorganize the cazadores a bit. It even gets a charge against that one and kills 30 men. But I kind of want to say that a regular militia would have been a more effective use. Over here, probably could be being more aggressive with the lights. And I would maybe shift one of them over to fire at the line there. Is what I would do. But here is kind of the main engagement. Pause. Prussia does the J. Martin tactic, which I love, and just runs everybody in real fucking close, which is a really good idea. When you get closer, you get better accuracy. If you're going to get shot anyway, you might as well get really accurate shots back. Portugal decides to charge cav at this point. The problem is that both cav units are targeting the same foot guard. That is a bad use of resources. What you really are using your cav to do is to disrupt the enemy's infantry, and you only need one cav unit to do with that. Portuguese infantry or cav sucks so fucking hard. He's not going to get a really good charge bonus. You can't rely on Portuguese cav to actually win a melee fight. So what he should be doing is charging this second cav at the second unit. Now we do get a miss square here, which is going to hurt a little bit, but not that much because Portuguese cav sucks that fucking hard. And you are charging foot guards, which is bad. Real quick, I'm not going to be able to get to this, but Portugal charges cav through here, which is going to disrupt the Prussian lights. Again, I kind of disagree with this because strategically the use of this cav isn't really timed with overwhelming firepower. When you get your cav in there like this cav is going to die. If the cav is going to die, then you want to make sure you get maximum value for it. The cav, as being used by both players in this game, is not being used as an independent tactical device. It's being used as a way to buy time. The cav in this game is being used as a meat shield. battlefield. And if you're going to commit your cav, the only thing supporting it are these 2 units of lights. You'd want to make sure before you make that charge that you have more infantry in firing range, because if you charge your cav to disrupt their infantry can't fire. You want to take advantage of that lull in the firing from the enemy given by the sacrifice of your cav to make sure that you're hitting with as much infantry as you can. So if I was Portugal, I would have waited and committed these charges until all of my infantry was in range to attack. And we're doing better here, but the flaw here is that we have 2 cav units going against the same infantry, which is not going to be ideal. Now, Portugal retreats the lights, which is good. There's most valuable resource, so he wants to get them out of there. Portugal does do a smart thing and switches targets and is trying to run his cav down the line. That's a very good use of resources. I might have pulled one of them back and recharged. It doesn't seem like Prussia is really intent in forming square here. So instead of just charging down the line, maybe charge one of them down the line, pull the other one back, and then get a charge in the rear. And even if you don't get a charge in the rear, you can see all this empty space here. If you just park 2 cav units back there, Prussia is fucked, right? Prussia, you can rear charge Prussia anytime. You've already served your goal of disrupting the one on the flank. And I think that maybe instead of charging my cav down the line, I would have pulled back and gotten the rear charge, is kind of what I would have done. Okay, so Prussia realizes they're disorganized here and has to pull back on the right, which is the correct thing to do. And the aftermath of we switched to the left of the cav coming through is Prussia decided that his lights got disorganized and he might as well just form in a line, which is sometimes the right play to make. And I think that Prussia right now is just pretty confident that he has, it looks like 7 infantry against 5, that he can just shoot it out, which is probably the correct play. It wouldn't hurt to keep your lights in light formation. Those guys are only at winded. They're going to take less casualties if you keep them in light formation. And what you have is a pretty classic. Portugal is winning here, so Prussia's kiting away. And Prussia's winning here, so Portugal's kiting away. And that's what you get. The noticeable thing is the weakness of both players in the center. And Prussia is finally making the move that I felt should have been made at the beginning of the game, or about 5 minutes ago, and bringing lights over to attack this section of the battlefield, or the center, where Prussia has an advantage. Now, Prussia makes another move on the right to advance these foot guards. An interesting thing is going to happen right here. 1v1 games are all about timing, and Napoleon doesn't necessarily require quick micro, but it requires intelligent micro. Now, the huge way, okay, pause. That unit just routed. The best way to gain advantage in Napoleon, I always call positional advantage. And the very simplistic way to look at that is having 2 of your units shooting at one of his. As soon as this unit routes, Portugal has won the flank, and Portugal is able now to swing their infantry around behind. Portugal doesn't need to have infantry or line behind their lights anymore because the other guy's cav is all dead. So as soon as that unit routes, these units should be booking it to try to get around the flank of Prussia. And if you watch the game, that is going to happen, but it should have already happened. It should have happened. It happens a bit late for truly optimal play. And again, Prussia is being aggressive here. Both players are cutting away on the flanks that they're weak, which makes a lot of sense. I love the move from Prussia to attack up the middle. Oh, the move to the flank finally occurs, right? He's moving here, which is the right move to make. Maybe 30 seconds earlier, and maybe would have caught that foot guard, which is down to 24. So there's a real danger for Prussia here, and you can see Prussia realizes that, so Prussia starts to run away. Prussia does have a problem, the same problem they had earlier in the game. They're not moving their general. When you move your army, you got to move your whole army, and Prussia is going to have a huge problem here because guess what? Their infantry retreats. Their general is still there. Their general gets shot to death. Now, what happens when your general gets shot to death? A couple things happen. The first is that you lose the positive benefits from having your general around. You lose the inspiration from the radius of the general. You lose the rally and inspire abilities. But the negative thing that happens is that your army takes a morale hit from general recently killed or general recently fled. When that occurs, for the next 2 or 3 minutes, your units are going to have really shaky morale. This guy's a bunch of foot guards over here, so they're not really going to care. But these units, although it isn't showing it, are going to have a morale penalty for concerned general routing. Or maybe actually the general himself didn't die, so with the remnants of that general unit are trekking across the map. As soon as that general exits the map, then that morale penalty will kick in. But the point I want to make is that the morale penalty for dead general ebbs away over time. It doesn't last forever, is kind of what happens. And you're going to see the effects of this here in the next few minutes. Portugal does have a pretty extreme advantage. They outnumber in infantry, and Portugal still has a bunch of light infantry left, so they can use that range advantage pretty against Prussia. And so right now we enter kind of like the mid game, and both armies are kind of going to reform and regroup, and we're going to see what happens. But if I was a betting man right now, I'd close the book and say that there's no way that Portugal can lose this game. Right, the way that this is turning out, it seems kind of like a crush at this point. And Portugal is going to advance on the right with their light infantry, and we're going to get a firefight going on here. This game was played on Ultra Settings, by the way, and then a mistake happens right here for some reason. It looks like Portugal was going to charge their general into the Prussian lights, which is good because the lights can't form square, and then stopped and just parks the general unit right here. And this is obviously just one of those little things, and that general unit is going to take a bunch of shots, and then Portugal says, oh, fuck, and continues the charge, right? But Portugal is going to take, they're down to 9-8. Portugal is going to continue that charge without their general dying or without the unit routing. The general unit were routed about 3 or 4. And so they do get the successful charge in, but the result is that general is going to take many more casualties. You notice that from the point of impact, they only went from 9 to 7. So the actual charge only cost the general unit 2 men. But so it would be at 22 men, or still pretty healthy. And that does kickstart a chain route. So that was a good play because it kickstarted the chain route. And you got to think that at this point, with the big chain route going on, that Portugal's got this in the bag. Just totally got it in the bag. And the chain route's going to start here. We're having a bunch of problems. And it looks like Prussia is down to maybe 4 men. Portugal sends its general to chase down routing units, which is a very good use for a cav. I really recommend that if you're playing and you have a depleted cav unit left with, say, 15 or 20 men, you save that and use it to chase down routing units. Now, the problem is that a couple units are going to come back from routing, and they're going to take shots at that Prussian general. That's the danger of using your general to do this. And that unit gets down to 4, and guess what? That's right about the point where a general unit is going to rout. Right about the point. And at the same time, a bunch of Prussian units come back from routing. It looks like about 5 of them have come back from routing. And so Prussia's got new life, and right there it kicks in, and that unit routes at 4. And what this means is that the Prussian general has just died. Or excuse me, the Portuguese general has just died. So all of a sudden, you have a Portuguese army which is probably pretty weak on morale to begin with. And I'm not sure, but I have a hunch that Portugal was using one of the expensive generals. That's one of the things you have to do when you're playing a weaker nation as Portugal. But Portugal's still doing pretty good. The problem is in the back of their pocket, they got this big morale penalty. Look at all their flags go red. Like all those flags, the general fled recently, right? All those flags immediately turn red. And another real weakness in Napoleon is that when you catch a few unlucky breaks, is morale penalties start to stack. You get general fled, stack that up, and that causes the unit to rout, and then you get a morale penalty for concerned friends routing, and then that morale penalty stacks up, and you kind of layer these morale penalties on each other, and you wind up with these really, really fucking crazy games. And what happens here is the entire Portuguese army chain routes. Entire army chain routes. And Prussia is left with 3 infantry units that had already... This guy already killed those units once. These guys all came back from routing. And Prussia winds up winning the fucking game. And you look at the kill totals, Portugal outplayed him. He killed more men, right? But it's just one of those weird, funky things with the timing of your general dying and... the little traits, and you get those morale penalties to stack up. You get a chain route. And a game where you outplay your opponent. You can still lose. And that's kind of an interesting thing about Napoleon, that you might lose a 1v1 game and you're like, how the fuck did I lose that? But you replay the game and go over it really analytically like we just did. And you see some things. Both players are, Portugal, I'm sure, played a really great game, but he's kicking himself at the end. Like, how the fuck did that happen? What the fuck? But we go back at the game, and the real reason it's important to watch games that you lose and think about how you lost. Like, we watched Prussia throw away 2 cav units. We watched Portugal, not use its cav as effectively, get the max value out of that cav as it should have. And you replay the game. Imagine that Portugal still had a live cav unit, going into the mid-game. Imagine that Prussia still had those 2 cav units got to use. And you recognize the little things. The only way to get better at the game is to watch games like this and be real analytical and kind of put your pride aside and say, okay, what did I do wrong? How do I get better? That's what you got to do. But Anyway, this is a crazy game. Bill Paxton and Corona of the Dio clan. Thanks for sending me the game, guys. It was a good watch. And yeah, that's it. My name is Jay Martin. We have a tournament going on, twreplays.com. It is a 2v2. The rules are all posted there. You can't miss it. Go to twreplays.com, click on the tournaments tab, and you'll find the information. Thanks for watching. My name is Jay Martin.